So I love listening to talk radio. I don't know why, but I enjoy it. I like podcasts, obviously, and YouTube videos and things like that. But in my car, I do generally listen to talk radio, and we have a lot of stations here in the Philadelphia area. We have a NPR station, which I really enjoy. We have two conservative talk radio stations, which I enjoy. Some of the DJs, or I guess they're not DJs. I don't know what they're called. Talker people. Pundits? Are they pundits? I don't know. Can't think of what their official name is. Hosts. Probably hosts. Hosts would be a good name for them. I like some of the national people. Dennis Prager is probably my favorite national guy that we get here. I'd love to get Ben Shapiro. I know he now has a radio show, but I watch his YouTube video, so I get about an hour of him. He's probably the most I'm committed to. Ew. But I generally catch his show every day, so I would say the most I'm committed to. We also have two sports talk radio stations, which I have to say is kind of a guilty pleasure. I enjoy that too. And then we have a all-black owned and black issue radio station, which me being a white suburban conservative, probably not their target audience, but it actually is a really well done station. I find some of the hosts, they have Al Sharpton in the middle of the day, and in the middle of the day my choices are Dennis Prager, Al Sharpton, or Rush Limbaugh, and Al Sharpton and Rush Limbaugh just are awful in so many ways that maybe that's why I like Dennis Prager so much. But Dennis Prager's a really interesting and smart guy, so I think he's head and shoulders above those two. But the liberal station, it's a progressive black station, is how they tag themselves. It's a AM 900. They actually do a really good job covering city council issues, probably because I think the conservatives have given up on city politics, but I'd like them to do more. They do it occasionally. The local hosts do, at least. That 900, I think it's like, I was going to say DRE, but that was an old rock station. I also like Preston and Steve do a morning show, on a rock station. And that's sort of a drive time, wacky DJ type thing, but they're a little better than that. It's not like Jim and the Boner or whatever. It's at least their first two names. They do a lot of like toilet, immature humor, but they're very funny, and I think they're probably one of the best. Although I haven't traveled the country much, and I haven't traveled the country in a way that I'm listening to other stations. They're not the stereotype of that type of radio show. And they also have the largest food drive in the country. They do that once a year. It's called the Camp Out Frogger. It's very cool. So I guess a long-winded point is I like talk radio, and I have a lot of options, generally speaking, that I don't have to. And I like different opinions, so it's not like I won't listen to someone who disagrees. I love the 900... the Black Progressive Radio host in the drive time afternoon. I think he does a really good job. He's very interesting. I disagree with him on almost everything, but he presents his arguments well, and it interests me to hear what his takes on certain things are. So that being said, the one problem I have, generally speaking, is I leave work around 6:30 on the weekends. So I work overnight and I leave Saturday and Sunday around 6:30. And the only people playing half interesting things are NPR. They have good talk all the time. And actually their off-hour talk, like their shows that are at sort of odd times, are great. Like Radio Lab is a terrific and very funny show. It has all sorts of interesting stories and like almost like skits. And Freakonomics is on sometime on Sunday, which is cool too. But what I get coming home Saturday mornings is a show called Living on Earth. It's an environmentalist show. NPR, I won't say they claim to be a straight-up news radio station. They sort of do, but I think they know their views skew left, but some of the shows are better than others. Like Latino USA is a La Raza puppet show. It's just awful. It's anti-Trump and it's bizarre. I think that is probably their most skewed show, except for Living on Earth, which is crazy environmentalists get the station for an hour. And obviously Republicans are their big enemies. I was interested, though, to hear what their take on the Green New Deal was. I hadn't heard much opinion of it from environmentalists, like serious opinion on it. And what I ended up getting was they did talk about it a lot. They had like a serious person talking about it, and I guess his thing is that maybe we do need to reach zero carbon emissions by 2030. I think that's pretty unrealistic, but it's something to work for. And he's not the one thing with if you're serious about carbon emissions and reducing them, I think nuclear power has to be an option. Because it's cheap and it works really well. It can power a large area, and it creates zero carbon emissions. Now there's nuclear waste, which is the drawback of it, is that what do we do with this waste? Although the newer plants, and we haven't had a new plant in a while here in this country. So the last plant was built in 1977, and the last one you started up for commercial use was 1996. I'm a little confused. I don't quite understand what the 1996 date means. Like it was started for commercial use, as if it was just sitting there waiting. But the last one we built was in 1977, and I think the problem is we've hurt ourselves in that we haven't explored that energy source more. I think we could really make it. I think it could be the energy of the future. It's what we need. There's going to be more electricity needing to be generated. That's another thing we have to accept, is that we need more electricity. And third world countries are going to need more electricity. Now, do we want third world countries building nuclear reactors? Well, if we get the technology safe enough, then yeah, probably, because that's how they're going to generate their electricity, and it won't be through burning coal. If global warming is your problem. And so this guy on Living on Earth was talking about different options and what he felt about the Green New Deal. He was for the Green New Deal. He liked that it started a conversation about climate. That's the other thing. I'm not a big fan of the climate change. I think global warming is more apropos than climate change, because climate is always changing. Where global warming sounds like something that's happening because of burning carbon. But this is the other problem, is I don't know if the Democrats are serious about global warming. I mean, they seem to be. And this is everything on that show. That show has become, I used to listen to that show probably like 7 years ago when I had a different job and was leaving. I left actually about the same time on Saturday mornings, and I listened to Living on Earth. It was a lot of different environmental issues, and now there's no other environmental issue other than global warming. That's all they talk about the whole time. It's different segments about global warming. They were talking about how the wall was going to hurt certain animals in that area because they couldn't cross to get food or water, and that very well could be true. I'm a little skeptical of it, but they they talked about a roadrunner, like it would hurt the roadrunner, although it's not a concrete wall, so there are slats, so you'd think the little roadrunner could get through, but this guy was convinced that the wall was going to make animals extinct or put on the endangered list. I'm skeptical of that, but it's doubled down because, well, these animals are all moving north because of climate change. okay, maybe there's not much evidence of that. I'm not saying there's not evidence of climate change. There clearly is, but are a bunch of animals migrating north? And it's all theoretical. This is the problem with climate change, and this is why I don't think people are taking it seriously. Is the Green New Deal is a ridiculous proposal, and it's veiled socialism as socialism is somehow gonna save our environment, and I don't see how that's possible. I mean, you look at some of the socialist countries; they're not reducing their carbon emission. They're not reducing their carbon emissions. Like China, although not socialist anymore, China and India their carbon emissions are going to keep growing for the next 10 to 20 years, if not longer. So this is why we need to probably cut our carbon, but it's not going to make a difference. And this is the other thing I'd like to hear from, the left is, if global warming is such a problem and there are certain things that are going to happen due to global warming, we probably need to prepare for it. And that doesn't seem to be an option. Like, no one's talking about how we maybe adjust our economy or adjust our cities and towns and shorefront communities to rising sea levels. There's no adjustment. Everything is cut carbon emission, and with this Green New Deal, it's cut carbon emission and socialism. And they don't have anything to do with each other. We could put incentives out there, and again, I think nuclear energy needs to be considered, and the fact that it's not even being considered makes me think that the people who talk about how serious they are about global warming are not actually serious about it. Not that it seems like they don't have any new ideas or creative ideas to stem the tide of global warming. They're not thinking outside the box. Their only answer is to cut carbon emissions and put more state control on the economy. Those are their two very original and new ideas. I know the new congressperson from New York. She's all over the news, AOC. Why would you have her write it? She's a freshman congressperson. She's been in Congress for a month. She was sworn in a month ago. And if this is your grand plan to fix the economy and stop global warming, why have her write it? Why even have her be a part of it? I mean, you can have her on the sidelines being like, oh yeah, she supports it, and isn't she young and exciting? But have a serious person write it. Have a veteran congressperson, one of your top people, write this. And it's not even a bill. It has no teeth. It's sort of goals we'd like to set. But even then, what you now have is people being taken aback. And the rollout of this was so clumsy. And the deal itself, the bill itself, looks like it should have been written in crayon. Her frequently asked questions answers were ludicrous. And again, for no one to step in and be like, this isn't going to quite work, worries me that we're not going to have anyone taking global warming seriously. That the Democrats like global warming because every time there's a hurricane now and every time there's bad weather, they get to blame Republicans for bad weather. They get to do that now. Every time there's a bad hurricane now, it's somehow Republicans' fault because they didn't take global warming seriously. They treat global warming like it is an angry, vengeful god. And if the right in this country would just worship it like they do, it wouldn't send so many bad hurricanes our way. It doesn't work that way. If global warming is caused by us driving cars and using electricity, we're all to blame. We're all to blame. And I don't even know if blame. I hear a lot of people shaking their fists at their parents' generation for using coal and oil. But these things pulled us out of abject poverty. I mean, the world economy as a whole is so much wealthier. Per person, it's so much wealthier. Things like starvation and infant mortality are down everywhere. If you were to take a person from 200 years ago and drop him in here, this would be a paradise. He'd be so amazed at all the little infighting we're having right now about nonsense when we just have it so good. And we do. We have it so good. You know, I don't know about you, but anyone listening to this podcast, how many meals have you missed not by choice? I'm sure there are people that have, but it's a low number. Obesity is a problem not only in this country but in multiple countries. That's a new thing. We are so wealthy and so well taken care of, and oil, gas, coal, that was all part of this advancement into a glorious economy in which we have refrigerators and cars. I mean, cars is one of the most liberating things ever invented. You can get in your car and you can literally go anywhere that isn't blocked by an ocean. I could right now, although I don't have a passport, I guess I'd have to get a passport, I could drive to Brazil in a car. That's one of the problems with things like trains. Trains are great, but our country was built with more liberty in mind, and we're less a collective society. So trains, I mean, they work for us. We take Amtrak to D.C. sometimes and all that, but it's not something that is ever going to take over for cars. And we're going to have electric cars hopefully someday, but when I hear people talk about, we're going to eliminate all carbon emissions in 10 years, and we're going to eliminate travel by plane. You're going to eliminate travel by plane? Like, you can. It's another freeing and wonderful invention that made travel possible for the middle class to poor. You know, my parents are not very wealthy. They've gone to Europe multiple times because they can. It used to not be like that. You'd have to take a boat, and it would be very expensive and very long, and you couldn't take that much time out of work. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't think we need a Green New Deal. We probably need a bunch of small bills in which we do a little better with our carbon creation, maybe look into what a new nuclear plant would look like, and if we could build a few, and how much waste it would produce, and what we'd have to do with that waste. I would like to see things like that, like serious considerations, and we don't have serious people in politics right now, and you can see it. You look at a lot of the Democratic presidential candidates, and I have trouble seeing most of them as serious people. Donald Trump is clearly not a serious person. So I'm a little interested in Howard Schultz, though. He seems like a serious guy, and he makes some pretty good coffee. So that was me just ranting for, I don't know, however long I cut this show down to. So thanks for listening, and I promise the next one will be much better and more interesting, and probably about a book.